Breachway, a deck-building roguelike in space with ships. Kind of sounds right up my alley. Early access just hit, and I picked up my copy of Breachway, ready to see what it's all about. With early access games, I try my best to look at what we have and not what the future might promise. Because you never know what will come to fruition, what will change, if a project will achieve everything it sets out to, etc. So when a developer gets my money, that's the point where I think we can fairly critique what we've received. Let's start by highlighting what the developers said will be available with early access. 4 ships, 300 cards, over 60 submodules, 6 crew members, 40 regular enemies, 16 elites, 2 bosses, 2 star systems, perks to unlock permanently, and an escalation system to make runs harder. There, I summarized it for you. They limited the game to that content so they could ensure a solid and enjoyable experience. I don't remember what the exact steps were to unlock the ships, but it was along the lines of play the game with 1 ship, do well, get the next ship. But the majority of content is immediately available or becomes unlocked very quickly, with the exception of the perks. Currently, it doesn't seem possible to unlock all the perk slots. Each ship has 3 bonus perk slots, but you're basically only going to get 2 of them. You start with 1 bonus perk slot. It might also require you to unlock a perk first, I'm not sure, I got it after my first run, so I can't guarantee if there were any requirements for it. To unlock the second, you need to unlock 5 perks, and to unlock the third, you need to unlock 10 perks. But there are only 8 perks currently in the game, so you'll just have to deal with 1 slot being permanently locked until some future update. The gameplay is pretty simple. You start your adventure by picking one of the 4 available ships, and then you explore as much of the map as you can. This allows you to grow your crew and improve your ship by adding weapons, shields, or other utility things. So sometimes you'll wind up with an extra crew member and no modules, or you'll wind up with some extra modules and no crew members. It usually works itself out by the time you're done the first star system though. The modules you've equipped in your ship are important because they dictate the cards that are both available to you and available to be added in the future. They control what types of cards can be added, and removing or exchanging new modules can completely remove sets of cards from your deck or add new ones. With all of that said, building your ship can be very RNG heavy. For example, some ships have a specific slot for a launch bay, which fires missiles. One of the ships instead has 3 weapon bays. There have been numerous runs where I got to the end and never found a missile module. I'd stop at multiple space stations where you can buy modules, I'd do various events, and it just wouldn't happen. This would often lead me to the final fight down an entire module. This isn't unique to missiles either. There were other runs where I'd struggle to fill out one of the utility modules too, which can be a major problem. It can be a major problem because in the game's current state, the final boss seems very overtuned. I've beaten it, but the problem sort of stems from how you beat it. When I play a roguelike, I generally expect that I can go through a game, collect different items, and put them together in a way that makes sense. You know, trying to make the most out of what you find. With Breachway, I feel forced to chase sets of items that are specifically chosen to deal with the final boss. I can't just put together whatever seemingly strong, awesome build I want to. This is because the entire game is basically about how you path to the final boss. I can put together a build that I think is fun, completely plow through all of the regular and elite enemies I meet along the way, and then get stomped by the final boss. This is because the final boss effectively nullifies a variety of strategies, so if you haven't pigeonholed yourself into a specific build, it's a massive uphill battle. I'm not saying you can't do it without a specific build, it just becomes unfun and tedious, and it doesn't feel like it's well balanced. If we ignore that very key part of the game, I actually think the combat is fun. Building my ship and watching it explode enemy ships is pretty satisfying. There are some builds that are a lot slower than others, and depending on how defensive you try and get, combat can get pretty tedious with regular enemies too. For the most part though, if you made a well-balanced deck, you'll probably have a good time. Where I have less of a good time is with the actual star system maps. There's this whole faction thing going on, and this idea of routing across the star system to find quests, rewards, and enemies to defeat. The problem is that your faction standing doesn't seem to have much meaningful impact on anything. And when you take a step along the star system board, all you usually reveal are what's happening on the adjacent nodes. This means that there's very little meaningful way to actually traverse a star system. You basically just pick a direction and choose one of two paths until you get to the end. There is some variance with the fuel system, which you can use to backtrack or create more interesting routes, but your fuel supplies are very limited, which means you can only get so creative. If more of the star system was visible, routing could become something that's fun, rather than a step in the game that I just feel like I have to interact with, because it gets me to the boss. I'm also aware that there are several ways to reveal bits and pieces of the map. It's just not significant enough, and sometimes I reveal things that I literally cannot reach anymore because I've gone too far in one direction. The one thing I haven't really talked about yet is the resource system. This is what actually enables you to use all of the cards you've built up across your journey. Your ship has a reactor, and every turn this reactor produces a set amount of each resource. You control what the ratio of resources is. So let's say your ship has 8 reactor power. You could put 4 into ordnance, 2 into energy, and 2 into mass. Or any combination that works, assuming that your resources have the necessary capacity. In combat, you can also control how the reactor distributes resources every turn. This is actually a surprisingly crucial piece of the game. Reallocating your resources in combat builds up heat for each resource reallocated. If your ship exceeds its heat capacity, you start to take passive damage equal to the amount of your overheating. Overheating is relevant to some cards, and is the main focus of one of the ships, but is otherwise a concept that's just kind of underutilized. Back to the reactor and your resources. These are going to be one of your main resource dumps, since they effectively control how many cards you can use per turn, and having more freedom to use cards is obviously good. Breachway is fun. I enjoyed the challenge of getting to the end and beating the final boss. However, once I did that, I didn't really feel any reason to do it again. This was a combination of how tedious it was and the fact that there aren't really any unlockables or rewards tied to beating the content available in the game. Sure, I could try to beat the game with each ship, but to what end? An achievement on Steam? The current state of Breachway feels like it might have been released too soon. Not because the game isn't fun, because there just doesn't feel like there's enough content. I know this is what the developers are going to be working on in the future, but as it is right now, I'm going to put Breachway down and maybe come back to it in a year to see what's new, if I even remember to do that. I just don't feel like it's memorable right now, and it sucks. I feel like it ended right when my ship was getting powerful and I was starting to enjoy it. But as always, that's just in my opinion. If you played Breachway, feel free to tell me everything I did wrong and why the final boss is actually super easy. Or, you can just do that anyways. See you next time.